when you get a wide margin Bible, going through this way, people get meticulous about, like, I don't know what to write, certain kind of pens. I've changed my whole mindset on that, because I just figured I'm gonna burn my Bible out. And so this is not my first Bible. I've already taped the pages into this one. And there's just sections of the Bible that I'll use a lot when I go places. I just got writing everywhere in it. And I just plan on about every 5 to 10 years getting a new Bible. So I'm already working on a third Bible. And now I'm doing a lot of electronic stuff. So I just want to encourage everybody. This helps me when I go to police. You know, if somebody asks a question. So I write all this stuff in here. So if somebody just says, Mike, what in the heck, God, why did God put the book of Hosea in the Bible? Or why in the world, you know, they get a question like, I'm totally just read the book of Zechariah, I don't understand it. And so instead of giving an answer, I usually say, well, let's go there. And then when I get there, I'm looking like, you know, okay, here's the key verse, here's what, you know, and I can give, and usually they'll be like, and that helped a lot, man, you know a lot. And I usually say, well, I really don't, but I wrote that in there. So I'd recommend you do the same, you know. So, I always do my own dope, you know. I just won't sell it, man, I do it. So, chapter.
You use pens, or, because what I did was, I noticed pens were leaking through on my pages, which is fairly thin, so I went about like colored 5-point pencils.
Yeah, I use pencils a lot now because you can erase. But I got the point where I'm just more casual. I'm more free. Like you can see here, Numbers 14. A lot of that's in pencil. And then I got crayons. So I use crayons. And you can see I got different colors in my Bible because stuff does bleed through. But I don't get crazy about that. I don't know. I used to be real meticulous, and I'd mess something up. Like, doggone it, you know, white out and try. And now I'm just like, man, I'm going to use this thing. But I got it. Let me see if I got it here.
Screwing it up.
Yeah, this one here is money. But I've had so many pages fall out, and people say, oh man, to be able to preach out of that, you ought to rebind it. You know, and I don't really want to. It's cool. I still use it now and then. My goal is, I've been praying for my daughters. I just prayed even again for them this morning, that God would give them a man, preferably a pastor or missionary. And my goal is to wrap this. It's my first Bible. And I'm going to give it to that. I say my first, it's my first Bible I sort of put notes in. That's what I meant. But even just little stuff like that, there's just some gold in here. And I want this dude to get me like, I said, dude, you got a study Bible I put a lot of years into it. It's yours. So I'm trying to keep this. I'm not going to rebind it. But I started on this one, and then I got a third one I actually started working on, because this one here, I don't know why the pages have fallen out of it very quickly. And part of it's because when I preach, sometimes I even do.
Sometimes. All the time you're doing it.
Yeah, it just feels right. You know, it feels like I got a football or something, you know.
Don't throw it in my way.
Yeah. And I'll catch myself sometimes, like, if I'm talking, I'll make a point, and I'll swing it down. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll just read
Don't
it
fall
up.
apart on it, you can do that.
Right.
Your teachings have fallen down like rain. You preached on that on
Oh,
Sunday.
yep, the doctrine's falling. Numbers 14, verses 31 through 30. I think because of time, we should just go straight to verse 34. Somebody read that, 14:34.
After the number of the days in which you search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall you bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise.
Right, so this is the key verse, and this is where they're wandering, so they're getting ready to wander, and he numbers the people. And now you know, what's cool about this is the way God places is he's numbering the people, because we know darn well that they're not going to the promised land. Right? So he's numbering the people. Then you're going to see at the end of this book, he numbers a whole new group of people because he wanted them to die off. That was part of their judgment. And so then, you hit the book, what's the next book? Judo. The second That means two, the second giving of the law. So now that these young guys are getting her going, he's like, okay, before we go. And now we would preach it and say, before you go, let's get back to doctrine. Of course, for them, it's the law. But it's kind of cool how God set the whole thing up. So anyways, the author, of course, is Moses. The theme. The theme of this book, I would write down rebellion and unbelief in the wilderness. I mean, you can write down, a lot of people too, the theme of this book is numbering in the wilderness. Yeah, but it's really rebellion and unbelief in the wilderness. They searched the land. Number 40 is the number of testing. So they searched the land, came back. Everybody had unbelief that, like, we ain't going to be able to do this. So God says, then every year, every day, you search the land, you will wander before me. So the time range here is about 1490 to 1457 BC. 38 years and 9 months is what it ends up being. And the way I got this figure was in Numbers 1:1. Write down here, Numbers 1:1, and then we'll go to Deuteronomy 1:3. So in Numbers 1:1, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tabernacle of the congregation on the, watch this, first day of the second month in the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt. So they're a couple years removed, right? So it says the first day, second month in the second year. Now, once you get through Numbers, and you're in Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 3, says, and it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month. Pretty clear. Just do the math and you're like, okay, we're right at 40. Real close. So, historical, doctrinal, inspirational. Historically, this is just the numbering in the wilderness. But I would also write this down. They were numbering for war. So historically, numbering in the wilderness, but put down for war. And with history, besides historical, we're going to write down Numbers 1:3, and then Numbers 26 and verse 2. And let's go look at it so we can see. Numbering in the wilderness for war. Somebody read it.
From 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. Thou and Aaron shall number them by their armies.
Right, and it repeats the same thing at the end of this book in 26:2. Take the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel from 20 years old upward throughout their father's house, all that are able to go to war. So, and in the next page we'll get to something on this, but I want to share something with you. This is kind of a neat, interesting point here. When somebody says, how many people are going to your church? What that is bragging rights. And you're supposed to be able to say, hundreds and hundreds of people, or thousands. Pastor asked me not too long ago too, how many people could you pastor? I'm sure you're talking about. How many people do you want to pastor? So I don't know how many you can pastor. I said, dude, I could preach to 5,000 people, 10,000. I don't know. That I could do. Pastor, you can't pastor 1,200 people. You got to do something different. And so I guess I just want to bring up a point here. If somebody said, how many people do we have Sunday morning? Well, I know we've been averaging right about 228 people. Sunday mornings. Okay, well, now let me ask you a different question. How many people Sunday were eating in the mess hall? 228 people? Okay, well, then let me ask that differently. How many people in your church are fighting without lines? That's the real number, you know? And here I like how he just says, we're number 20 years old, those that are able to go to war. Because at the end of the day, this sounds terrible, I hope it don't sound like it. Just take it with a grain of salt, because it's not totally it. Because the rest don't matter. I know if the enemy comes in, those are the people that are going to get destroyed, eaten up, pillaged and raped, and they're going to be destroyed. There'll be a handful of people that stand. It happens everywhere I've been at in ministry. Like the devil comes through and just tears the whole place apart. And there's just a small group of people standing for life. And those are the ones that we're going to be from the very beginning. You know? So that's the real question to ask: is how many people, how many warriors do you have here? Once again, my strong point: history, doctrine, inspiration. I read a book like this, and I think of inspirational things. Well, how can this mean something to me? Because honestly, the book of Numbers can be pretty boring, especially when you're going through a lot of that genealogy. But here's another thing, guys. I read the book of Numbers, and I'm starting to read these names and go through. I can't put them together. I can't put them in proper order. And sometimes when I'm frustrated, I start to ramble, just not even paying attention. And God reminds me, your name's in the book of life. I marked you down. I didn't take that lightly. So sometimes when I read a book like this and I'm bored in the midst of it, I'm like, God, I don't know what I get. And God just has to remind me, Mike, you've been counted. You've been counted. Boring, just to read all these numbers, but I don't know, people in this church, people leave this church when they don't feel important. They don't feel counted or valuable. And they're not listed somewhere. And so I just practically learn things like that in difficult books like this. So that's history, right? Numbering in the wilderness for war. Doctrinally, it would be, I think it could be Israel today and during the tribulation period. Because Israel was in rebellion and unbelief back then, and currently Israel's in rebellion and unbelief. They're blind. So doctrinally, it would be Israel today and during the tribulation period. Now, from you read Numbers this week, what would be inspirational? What would you put down?
The way I looked at it this week, and Taylor and I sat down and talked about it, I was like, I feel like the fear of the Lord is going crazy in Numbers.
Yeah?
I'm like,
Well,
well,
you guys can sit down and talk about it. Sit down and talk about it.
we were like,
Let's just start calling
you
it
don't
that.
do that right, you're dead. You don't do that right, you're dead. Like we just.
That is very true.
But I
That
mean,
is very true.
this week I was just like, I don't know, it gave me a whole new perspective of the fear of the Lord, and we talked about, and Bo was talking about that verse that said fear and reverence is different, and I thought, yes, because I was a little convicted. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not fearing like I
yeah.
should be. I felt like Numbers was terrifying this week.
Yeah.
So,
See, that's a good inspirational application, and I need to fear more. As they're going through tough times in rebellion, I mean, you could even put that down inspiration, that, this has been the trials of my life, the rebellion I've been through. My walk with Jesus, That's inspiration. We pull different chapters, different things, but yeah. And that's what I like about inspirational stuff. As long as you don't mess up the doctrine, your inspiration is not wrong. So we could all read chapter 14 and come away with 4 different inspirational thoughts, and none of us be wrong. The bad part is when you're twisting things like doctrine and messing up. I know it don't really mean this, but, here's what I got out of it. Okay, that's not really accurate with the Bible. so that don't count, you know? As long as we're all doctrine, all right, so. Okay, this is the best part, where Christ is seen. We all want to see Jesus in the Bible, everywhere you read. So, Christ is seen as, and let's, I don't know what's your notes look like.
ABC.
Gotcha. So Christ is seen as a serpent. Well, Christ is seen as a serpent, and we know that from chapter 21, verse 8. So let's go there. We're going to start moving along around time. There's a lot in the tabernacle. Chapter 21. Now, isn't it weird that when mankind fell into sin, he fell into sin because a serpent came along and talked him into it. So a serpent pictures evil, it pictures the devil, it pictures sin. And now we see here that Christ, the serpent, is a picture of Jesus. So look at Numbers 21, somebody read verse 8.
And the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent, set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live.
Okay, I probably messed up there a little bit. Bump up to look at verse 5. And the people spake against God and against Moses, wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water. Our soul loatheth this light bread, and the tick with the man. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. God literally sent poisonous snakes and they bit them. Verse 7, therefore the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, we've spoken against the Lord, against thee. Pray unto that God will take away these serpents. But Moses prayed for the people. In verse 8, and that's when the Lord said unto Moses, make a fiery serpent, set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. Verse 9. Moses made a serpent of brass. He put it upon a pole, and it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. And to this day, the universal symbol for medical help is the serpent on a pole. Everywhere you go, in every doctor's office, I mean, I'm going to do it bad, but we've got this little pole, and there's always a serpent around it. That's a universal symbol for medicine and health. They get this right from the Bible. So,
Now, usually a serpent would be like a picture of Satan.
yeah.
So is this the only time that it would be a picture of something other than Satan? Like Jesus?
Well,
Or something?
because what it really pictures here is when Jesus chose to take the sin of the world, when it fell upon him, God himself turned his back on Jesus, because Jesus now has the sin of the world. So the serpent who brought sin into, this is a picture of Jesus on the cross. That's a curse. Jesus took a curse for us. And you'll find out in the Bible that Satan appears several different ways. And it's kind of cool because Satan is this great dragon in the Bible. He's called the great red dragon, serpent. Then he appears in the garden. He's the serpent-like figure by name. But then he lost his legs and became a snake. So he became like crawling on his belly, eating dust. And then when he gets his judgment in the end, the Bible says in Ezekiel 28 that God says, and I will turn you into a worm. It's kind of cool. It's all kind of sort of reptile type of slimy, you know. One's like masculine and tough, and then God makes him crawl on his belly, and then eventually he's just a worm. But A, write down. There's first of all, we need to see a need for salvation. Guys, this preaches like crazy. Somebody read verse 6 again in Numbers 21.
And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died.
So there's a need for salvation, because the Bible says, in Romans 3:23, what's it say?
All sin and foot going to God.
And since everybody's sinned, the wages of sin is death. Guys, there's a need for salvation. Here, people were dying. Snakes were really biting, they were really dying. Need for salvation. B, write down method of salvation. There's a method of salvation. And that would be in verse 8. You've already read it, where he says, put the fiery serpent upon a pole, lift it up, and then when you look at people that look shall live. So, write down like Galatians 4, 3 and 4, look at time, we'll do a time to turn there. Romans chapter 3 and verse 24. So the method of salvation was the serpents that bit them. Basically, for us, Jesus became that serpent, became our sin, and he hung on the cross. The method of salvation is, you'll see Jesus on the cross. It's the only way to get justification. So, C, write down the condition. The condition of salvation. Of course, once again, you could write down verse 8. I mean, people are dying, and what's it say they should do in verse 8? How do they get healed here? What's that?
Look upon.
Right. To look upon what?
Serpent.
Yeah. For us, lift Jesus up, and he'll draw men to himself. Look unto Jesus, the author and the finisher here. So they're not told, and here's the stuff that preaches. They're not told to look at their wounds to be saved. Write that down. Not told to look at wounds to be saved. We do that to people. These people got these snake bites on them. They're like, oh, man, I've been so hurt, man. You don't know what I've been through in my life. And God's got to be gracious to me, man. Look at all the pain I've had. Your wounds have nothing to do with this. You're born in sin, dude. They're not told to look at Moses to be saved. Moses wasn't the key figure here. So write that in the next line. They're not told to look at Moses. Here's something cool. They're not told to shake off the serpent to be saved. Because what do people say? They'll tell people all the time that they're struggling with an addiction or something. They'll just say, brother, God will take that alcohol from you. You just get rid of that alcohol. No, it's not that either. They're not told to shake off the serpent's feet. They're not even told to keep the law. Okay, keep the law. They're not told to do that. They're not told to help each other. That's the next line after keep the law. But they're not told to go help each other. And Jesus only helps those that helps themselves. None of that's said. So the last line I'm not told. They're not told to go through any ritual here at all. Bottom line is, I think I wrote the next one down for you, but they were told to look upon the brass serpent. You got that down? Is that verse Isaiah 55, 45:22 in there? Right beside that, the brass serpent, Isaiah 45:22. And that's just where the Lord says, look unto me. So you can even write D. You can write down the extent of salvation. Extent of salvation. Once again, verse 8, what it says. Anyone, everyone that looks upon this thing, the serpent on the pole, will be saved. Of course, right now in John 3:16, it just preaches. And I like this one. This is my favorite. The the effects of salvation. Look what it says in verse 9. And Moses made a serpent of brass, put it upon a pole, and it came to pass that if a serpent had bit any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. So it says here they were instantly, like they were dying. On the spot, they're poisoned, they're dying. If they looked for healing, and they looked, like just like any man would look to Christ for salvation, for help, for real healing. The effects of salvation, basically, the point here is it's instantaneous. When you get saved, salvation's instant. The poison is instantly gone. That's why we're new creatures in Christ. Right? John 5:24. And we know that people have to grow. We know they're still going to battle some things. But the effects of salvation is you get like an instant life change. Terry Hodges Sunday afternoon, Terry Hodges on Sunday afternoon led that guy to Christ at Taco John's. He did get saved. Really beautiful thing. Terry seen him today. He said, "Are you in the Word? Did you read?" Terry took him the Bible. Did you read John? Terry's already got him a church. And the guy said, "Yeah, I did, but I'm really bothered by something." And there's a passage in John on communion where he just says, "Jesus is taking you from my body and who this is." I'm freaked out. I just don't understand drinking. Eating flesh and drinking blood. It's weird. That's like cult stuff, you know. Terry said, I knew enough to be able to explain to him, no, let me tell you what's going on. It represents Jesus. And the guy was just like, oh, cool. I didn't realize. So the dude's in the Word, and you know, I like it, but my whole point in telling you that story was the dude's got instant life. He is different. And Terry says, Mike, I can tell. He's just different. So that's a beautiful picture of Jesus. So, okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Looking at your blanks there, I'll set you up with some answers for this. Let's go to the next page. These are other pictures of Jesus Christ. A red heifer, a cloud by night, cities of refuge. Them are all beautiful, beautiful pictures in this book. But let's go to page 10. And this is, I think, especially since we talked about the tabernacle, I thought this would be good to kind of throw down. There's so many layers to this, it's not even funny. But chapters 1 through 10 write down preparation of the old generation to inherit the promised land. 1 through 10 is prep for the old generation to enter the promised land. Preparation of the old generation to enter the promised land. Now, chapters 10 through 25, what we're going to see here in this book as it unfolds is this is where they fail. They fail. The old generation fails to inherit the promised land. They fail to enter. So then in chapters 26 through 36, now it's a prep for the new generation to inherit the promised land. So that's why at the beginning of this book there's a numbering. Chapter 26 and verse 2. They number those 20 years old now. That makes sense? Super simple outline of this book, and it works. It's just really perfect. So, and by the way, practically to see change come, a lot of times the old has got to pass away. So Martin Luther, when he became a real Christian, he decided to go back to the Catholic Church and really change it. He discovered it was one fight after another, one persecution after another, and that's when he started the Lutheran Church. But it's kind of like going to a church. Every once in a while I have to do it here. I remember I sat down. If you guys knew the people that started with me in this ministry, there's still a handful of them here, but I had a Christmas party. We all got in my living room around we watched this old video of the past, and some, all of our kids were real little, it was really sweet. But I basically said, hey, Merry Christmas to all of you, I love you guys, thanks for being with us for all these years. I just need to know tonight, I need to nail this coffin, last nail in the coffin, we don't run by some lawyer in our church. So we do that. I don't want it to be that way, for a new pastor. So it's a sad night. Half the people I left, they were fired up, the other half not, and they knew it. It was death. Can't let them, I could not let them continue on and have their opinion. And so that night I took it, cleared it up, because this principle here, the old generation's gotta go. And that's why, like me as a pastor, the day I quit getting fresh vision from God, or I quit letting young people do things, or if I get stuck in a rut with whatever, it's where the church, you know, this is where we need to be open with each other. And like, I hope I don't get to the point where the church is like, what do we do? How do we get rid of this guy now? He's old, you don't wanna leave. It's his baby, and you don't, I hope we start having those conversations years ahead of time. And I hope they just say, hey, what we'd like you to do, Mike, is, hey, you're not, hope it's not the thing for you, and I hope I'm man enough to say, yeah, I can tell it's not happening anymore, and the illustrations ain't fresh. They're like, but we want you as an old sage teaching the Bible Institute. As long as you can, we want you still teaching our young men, you know. But you gotta talk about those things, instead of like going through this hard time, and just say, well, we're just gonna die.
We'll find you a side project. Don't worry, we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
When you're old and crazy.
I'll just pray I'm senile. I won't know what's going on.
Even if you're not, we'll take care of you.
Yeah, Mike, you can't preach in your underwear.
Mike's not clothed again.
Okay, everybody's got that big paper, man, right in the middle, that big tabernacle. We've talked about it, right? Okay, so let me kind of put it up here. Then, we've got this outer deal. And then in the middle, we've got the tabernacle, right? So we've seen what the tabernacle was. So what I want to do now is, most of this is right in the book of Numbers. And it's actually back at the beginning of the book of Numbers, because it lays out Numbers chapters, the tribes. The order of the tribes and the tents are in chapter 2 and in chapter 3. So, what I want to do is I want to, this is going to be north, this is going to be south, and this is going to be east, and this is going to be west. Now, the door to the tabernacle was here. Remember? Then you got the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle. Remember that? So, it's just kind of cool to know, because east to west. East to west, just a good one to mark down. So what you have is, if you read this, chapters 2 and 3, it'll outline where all these families need to be. And so, how many tribes of Israel? 12 tribes of Israel. So there's 12 tribes of Israel. And what tribe of Israel are the priesthood? Levites. It's the Levites. So, the hard part is God has designed and made the Levites so that they could be the priests. Are all priests Levites? Yes. But not all Levites are priests. Just keep that in mind. They all have different jobs. What's crazy about this is, let's do this. You put the Levites around the tabernacle. I think some people, some lines here to show it's divided on each side. Now, there's 4 different groups of Levites around the tabernacle, and they got different jobs. They're not all part of the priesthood, but they all serve. So technically, they don't even get inheritance in the promised land. So, basically, if you minus the Levites, now you're down to 11 tribes that get inheritance. And then what you do is you take away another tribe, which is the tribe of Joseph, and now you're down to 10. But Joseph dies, and his 2 sons take over, Manasseh and Ephraim, and now we're back to 12. So there's our number for our tribes. You'll see it. And if you read through here looking for it, you definitely see it. But check this out. The cool thing about these Levites are, like, basically, Levi had 3 sons and a daughter. And so, and when the daughter, basically, when the daughter married, she married into the family, and they're kind of supposed to, she had sons, and the sons actually were Moses and Aaron. So, right here, I would put Moses and Aaron, or you could put the daughter's name. Her name was, well, you don't go by name, but she married Jochebed. No, that is the daughter's name, yes. So, basically, the rest around here, you'll find that Levi, it would be of the sons of, and it would name their names like Gershon, Kohath, or, Gershon. I just wanted you to know that Kohath, and up here, it's going to be, but just keep this in mind. Don't confuse it. It's all Levi, right? Sons, and then the daughter marries and has 2 kids. So one of one. Okay, check this out. Now the tribes were supposed to camp around the tabernacle, and so what you need to do is write down. This would be Naphtali, Dan, and Asher. He said they would be north, so this was their camp. Now if you're going to the east, it would be Zebulun, Judah, Issachar, Gad, Reuben, Simeon. And then our other 3 tribes are going to be, here's Joseph's boys. Manasseh, Ephraim, and then Benjamin. Now, you can see if the tabernacle's here, the mercy seat of God's in there. This is God in His presence, right? You are not going to get through the tabernacle unless you go through Levi, a picture of Jesus Christ. You gotta go through Christ to get to God. We know that, right? Now, they got numbers in here for how many, like, of the tribes there would be. Because what's crazy is, like, it would call this the camp of Reuben. Now, it mentioned Simeon and Gad. But so basically, just to let everybody know that Judah, this is the line Jesus comes from. This is the camp of Judah, with Zebulun and Issachar. This is the camp of Dan, so that's why it's in the middle. So you might want to kind of highlight them a little bit. Now, what's super interesting too about this is, it's interesting that around the throne of God, there is cherubims. And cherubs in the Bible had faces, and 4 faces. They had the face of a man, an eagle, an ox, and then a lion. They had all 4 faces, depending on which way you look at it. And so it's interesting that when you read about these boys, you'll find out that, like, you know, they all represent, like, the eagle. This one would be the lion of the tribe of Judah. Reuben would be the face of a man. And then the ox. Now remember, guys, there is a heavenly tabernacle. So all this stuff, you know, the Bible says, in one day the 12 apostles will sit on 12 thrones. And okay, we're kind of getting it. This is how he set up the Old Testament, but it all meant something. You know what's, I don't know, this kind of freaks me out a little bit. What's freaking crazy about this to me is, they'll just say, like, and Dan had the camp of the north, along with Asher and Naphtali. He never says, like, well, technically, Asher would be northeast. We don't use those terms, and I know why he does it. I think I know why. And I think because if this was on a different scale, I think we'd be able to see that I think this is exactly how it lines up. Where I think we end up with the cross, but at the center is God and His glory. And if you really want to get technical, I think the reason these groups represent this is because around the throne of God was these cherubim beings, 4, and 1 covering chair, which was Lucifer, which he was on top of the throne. I think it's just a total picture of eternity. I think we see the cross. I think we see high priest. I think it all means something probably way more than we even know. But it's pretty darn fantastic how God was specific about it. God's so specific in the book of Numbers, like in Numbers 2, 32 through 34, I know he says, Naphtali, Dan, and Asher, there's 157,600 of you. He gets specific with all their numbers. I just don't know it. So like when that book here about 10 years ago, the Bible Code came out, and everybody's freaking out like, you think all these numbers mean something? Well, that Bible Code book is foolishness. But I think there was an edge of truth on it. I think one day we will see this and go, holy crap. Who knew what that number meant? It did mean something. I think the Hebrews 9:11 is the verse that says Jesus is our high priest. So if you get to the holy holies, you have to be God. But this is how he set up this tabernacle. says that if everything that was written, that could be written, the whole world would contain a book. So, I don't know, sometimes I think, God, why are you wasting these verses in the book of Numbers to show us exactly where these people go, exactly how many people there are? And man, I don't know, but I'm very confident that he makes it clear that he whittled the Bible down to nothing. He whittled it down to something we can hold on our hands. The world couldn't contain the books if everything was written. So he gave us something small and he included something like this in it. So somebody might say, well, what does this have to do with me today? I can pull out a few little things, I don't know. There's probably something so stinking rich in here.
Well, that right there, I tell you, that's the most important stuff right there. The book,
Yeah,
there has to be.
yeah, right.
Stuff.
Yeah. And just because we don't get it, don't mean, it's super awesome. So yeah, I just went on the keynote, thought it'd be nice to look at it's nice to have a picture of the distribution of the camp division. And honestly, if you're teaching a class on the nation of Israel one day, it's probably not gonna be super duper inspirational a lot of times. You're gonna be talking about each one of the tribes, what their name means. Their daddy gave them all a blessing. I don't know. Maybe it'd be something more for the nation of Israel than for us. Any questions or anything to add to it? You can create your own chart and find the numbers in it, because it's all in Numbers chapter 2. Those are the exact numbers, if you wanted to put that on there.
I was going through that, I did the diagram myself, and added the numbers, the total comes out 603, 550. I don't know if that has any significance, and I was trying to add the numbers up to see if there was a pattern between the four, north, south.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Well, you know what's crazy too, is God's got a pocket for these guys to fit in. So all we know is in the New Testament, when Jesus looks up to his men are scattered, the sheep having no shepherd. We read in James, the 12 tribes scattered abroad. God had a very specific place for them to be, and they're scattered all over the world.
There's significance in the number 19.
Not that I know of. Yeah, there's significance in the number 18. There's 18 types of the Antichrist in the Bible. 666.
Yeah, I don't remember that 157. You add some of these up, leave the total, you just add the
Yeah.
positive numbers together, you get like 19.
Yeah. I do know there's a reason for it, but I can't really quite get it. Yeah, yeah, and I even got down on mine, like, I know that this group of the Levites here, I know specifically, because it says in chapter 3, the external covering, they were in charge of the external covering of the tabernacle. Well, then you get down to the Kohathites, Levites still, but they were in charge of the internal equipment of the tabernacle. It specifically says that in chapter 3, verse 31. So, and then the other group over here was the structural components. And then this group right here, Moses and Aaron, they were doing the priestly duties. And everybody had to give money. These people worked. So these people worked. And that's how they got it. So they got paid. So that's where the tithe came in. The tithe, because like in our system, we would do government workers. this tabernacle, you know, this tabernacle was made because, they're supposed to have tops. It's supposed to be molded. They were able to take it up, pack it, and they had a system, and all these people had their pieces and parts, and they would go. But that's when they looked at the giants in the land, and they decided to not go, sit still. And so it's crazy. And what ends up happening? And God just says, okay, you're gonna wander. And that's it, it just, life, it just got old, and the new generation, they went in. Of course, then later, you know how it was, the tabernacle became the temple. Because it's supposed to be in Jerusalem. It's supposed to be that permanent place. So I always practically, that's why the New Testament tells us, oh, well, our bodies are the temple. This church is the temple, the body. So that's why I always thought the Lord told us as Christians, you always use this word content. And I always thought, okay, content. Content. It just had the feeling to me like, don't put your roots too deep. Move. You might be going to Zambia. Don't get too comfortable, and everybody wants to, because you want to put down like roots, and, well, man, our home's in heaven. This earth ain't our home. And so the same type of principle is, there's a land to inherit. There's a group of people God's called us to, and I know it ain't physical land in the New Testament. We're not gonna do that. Look at the soul. The soul is not. Israel can worry about the land stuff. Ours is all spiritual, kingdom of God. So you've got to be up and going. And that's crazy. What happens is they start internally fighting. It just becomes a mess. And I can make a lot of pictures to the church, like saying, "Oh my gosh, this is what happened. I'm not involved in the mission." People get upset about something stupid. So, this is the weirdest whiteboard. It's like recent.
You know, when you're erasing stuff.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the eraser, but it's a staple thing. I don't know. I've even wiped it with Windex, and it does better, but. Well, I think, next week, read the book of Deuteronomy. And then Bo said, he wants to take a break from me